Panda acknowledges the traditional owners of the land where we work and live. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We celebrate the stories, culture and traditions of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders of all communities who also work and live on this land. Today's episode was produced on the lands of the Dja Dja Wurrung, Kaurna, Jagera, Yagara and Yugarapul peoples. Just a word of warning, this episode has mentions of suicide, so you might choose to listen to another episode of Survive and Thrive instead, or if you do need to talk to someone, you can call Lifeline on 13 11 14.
I never wanted to be a dad. Never. Was just never on the radar. I think as a young child, I remember having daydreams about being a dad and having a happy little nuclear family with a picket fence. I think that was because I didn't have a happy upbringing. My mum died by suicide when I was 9 months old. So I don't know wholly because of that, but I grew up not wanting to have kids. So that was beyond my scope, having a family. It was just absolutely never on the radar. But then, just when Suzi said she was pregnant, I think I was just adamant that I was going to do the right thing. So I didn't know what it would look like, being a dad. I don't know if I ever made a conscious decision that I wasn't going to do it the way my dad did. Even before Oscar came along, I had very tearful conversations with Suzi, just saying, I'm so scared that I've got him in me and that I'm going to react in a way or that I'm going to end up being like him.
I don't have to tell you there's no guidebook for this parenting ride. But if you're lucky, you might have a few people in your life who can show you a thing or two about how it's done. For lots of us, that's our parents. We look to their example, both the good things they did and of course the mistakes they made. We can learn from them and build on those lessons. But not all of us have parents who we can turn to when we bring children into this world. For a million different reasons, not everyone can be the mum or dad they wanted to be. So that leaves lots of us starting our own journey as parents without the guidebook written by our own. I'm Gia, and this is Survive and Thrive, a podcast from Perinatal Anxiety and Depression Australia, who you probably know as Panda. Chris and Suzi never thought they'd have kids, but for very different reasons. But despite it all, they did fall pregnant as a new couple. What followed were some really heavy times, but they both made a commitment to be the best parents that they could be. And they decided to do things differently.
I'm Chris. I'm 47, was 42 when Oscar was born, and he is a bright, vibrant, young 4.5-year-old boy.
I'm Suzi. I'm 42, and he goes to 4-year-old kinder at the moment. He's great.
Beautiful. Now tell me, how did you guys meet?
We met at work. We're both registered nurses and we were working in the same facility at the local hospital. And romance blossomed.
Yes, it did, yeah.
We'd been going out for about 12 months.
Yeah.
And
Surprise, yeah.
It did come as a huge surprise when you fell pregnant, Suzi. Can you tell me a little bit about your struggles getting pregnant in the past?
So prior to meeting Chris, I had been married and we spent many, many years doing IVF. I think that was sort of the nail in the coffin for the relationship, which is, a good thing in the long term, obviously. So when Chris and I met, he sort of knew a bit of my struggles because we'd worked together for a bit at that stage. But we sort of went into the relationship with the understanding that we wouldn't be having children. So it was, quite a big shock. I got to the stage of accepting that I wasn't going to be a mum, even though that was something I really look forward to doing. And I was, in that acceptance stage, I'd say. And then, life throws you a bit of a curveball, and I was just, spent the next couple of years probably in shock, to be honest.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately for you guys, the timing was not great when you did fall pregnant, Suzi. Chris, if you're okay to speak about it, can you tell me a little bit about that year, 2018?
I think it was the 9th of January that year. I got a phone call saying that my dad had had a couple of falls, I think, in a short period of time. And then I got a phone call saying that he had a stage 4 glioblastoma, which is a brain cancer, terminal brain cancer. And probably within a couple of weeks, he'd had a surgery, lost the use of half of his body. He was a bit of a difficult personality, my dad. Always had probably a strained relationship with him, but he was still my dad. Still loved him. So we knew that we had limited time with him, but he was not accepting, I think, partly through his personality and partly from his brain injury. He couldn't really get his head around what was happening to him, I don't think. And then, I knew Suze wanted to have kids, and one night she sort of, we were talking and she said, I'd just like to try. And I thought, because I knew her story, I thought it's sort of like buying a Tats Lotto ticket, that there's not much chance
in that.
But I wanted to make her happy. And in April, she said that she was pregnant.
Gosh, I'm so sorry, firstly, Chris, that you've gone through all this. That must have been so traumatic with your dad. I can't even imagine. Can you talk me through some of the mixed emotions you must have both had at that time when Suzi found out that she was pregnant?
For me, initially, just absolute disbelief. And both of us were just like, oh my God, this is happening and this is the worst possible timing ever. There's a real selfish part of me that just sort of thought, I've waited for this for such a long time and I feel like I can't actually celebrate it because of everything else that's going on. And it's a pretty selfish thought and everything, but I was like, it should be a really wonderful celebratory time because it's finally happened and I can't do that. So that was pretty sad as well. But it was hard. It was really hard.
Yeah, I think for me it felt like what else can the universe throw at me? I felt like what was happening with Dad was beyond my capacity, and I didn't feel that I was dealing with it very well, and it wasn't a happy time.
No, it wasn't.
Not at all. But there was no question that I wasn't going to be involved, and more than be involved, that I knew I was going to be a dad, but everything that was happening was so surreal that none of it really felt real until, of course, Suze's tummy started getting bigger and had to start going to the appointments. But there was never any question in my mind about that I was, going to be a dad and that we were going to share this responsibility. What that looked like was absolutely beyond my capacity. I had no idea. So, I was looking at at a relatively young age, looking at the prospect of losing my dad at the same time as becoming a father, and him with his limited capacity to even understand, share any kind of thoughts or knowledge. He celebrated. He was one of the first people that we spoke to about it.
Yeah, he was pretty excited, which was nice.
We told him Oscar's name. He was the only one that knew Oscar's name. It was obviously a very depressing and traumatic time, but being able to bring this beautiful, glowing, pregnant woman into a space where someone's dying, and I think pregnant women just put a smile on people's face.
Yeah, it's a shock to most people when they go through the journey to becoming a parent, but to have to deal with that incredible grief at the same time would have just been horrific. Chris, before you became a dad, what were your thoughts of what being a father would be like?
I never wanted to be a dad. Never was just never on the radar. I think as a young child, I remember having daydreams about being a dad and having a happy little nuclear family with a picket fence. I think that was because I didn't have a happy upbringing. I was provided for safe, but my home environment wasn't a happy place. My mum died by suicide when I was 9 months old, and my dad met my stepmum. They never got married, but we moved in with her when I was 2, and we never had. It was not an affectionate household. It was a difficult place to grow up. You think it's normal at the time because you don't know any different, but being older and just having a lifetime to think about it wasn't happy. I had a difficult relationship with my dad, so I don't know wholly because of that, but I grew up not wanting to have kids. But then, just when Suzi said she was pregnant, I think I don't know how I would have acted 20 years ago in my 20s or maybe even in my 30s, but I don't know if I ever made a conscious decision that I wasn't going to do it the way my dad did. I always grew up, I suppose, also being told by the women in my family that you're not going to grow up to be like your dad, and I knew I didn't want that. Even before Oscar came along, like I had very tearful conversations with Suzi, just saying, I'm so scared that I've got him in me and that I'm going to react in a way or that I'm going to end up being like him. And that is a huge, huge fear that I don't know if I can ever get rid of. You can practice mindfulness, but then there's things like that just creep in.
And I just remind you, look, because sometimes you might get angry about something that particularly Oscar's done, and you might fly off and you go, oh my God, I just did exactly what my dad did. I said, yeah, but you're not your dad, are you? Like, you're not anything like him. So, he was very career focused and less so on family, whereas, you're pretty much the opposite. So, yeah, you're not your dad.
Aside from Dad's personality and just the whole relationship history and everything, and just even the fact that I could never I'd never had a conversation with my dad about my mum. So on top of the pregnancy and his personality, I had that to deal with as well. So it was, I just felt like I didn't have any time to catch up, that I was just surviving. I was really just surviving through that time. I had to survive because of my own family history, because there was no way I was going to leave Suze as a single parent, and I had to look after her because there was no way she was going to leave me as a single parent, because I wouldn't have been able to do that. I did have, and I still have, just that absolute fear of being abandoned. You can practice mindfulness, you can practice logic around these things, but that will never go away.
Okay. How is that for you, Suzi, when you hear Chris speak like that?
It's really heartbreaking to hear, and especially, particularly if you felt this way as a child as well. I mean, no one should have to feel like that. But also too, I'm looking at it now going, well, joke's on you, mate, because you're stuck with me.
Chris, thank you again for being so honest. What things do you do, or what did you do in the early stages after your dad passed away? How did you cope? What did you turn to?
It was such a busy time with Dad died at the end of September, and then Oscar was born end of November. So they sort of missed each other by 2 months. And that was, as troubled as our relationship was. Again, he was my dad, and I would have given anything for them to be able to meet. I'd probably just get away and play music when I could. I probably drank. I did drink more than I should have. There'd be nights where I think it was, I'm not proud of this, but 2 weeks after we got home with Oscar, I kind of said, everything is going okay. I'm going to have a few beers, and everything wasn't going okay. We had a 2-week-old baby in the house, and as soon as I had a beer or even the thought of a beer, I was not reliable anymore, even though I wasn't on the ground. I was just having a few beers, but I think as far as Suze was concerned, and I would be the same if my partner had done it, I couldn't be trusted anymore. Not to do something horrible, but as far as judgment and reliability, if something went wrong, if there was an emergency, I can't be trusted because I've had a few beers. And it's not just then having a few hours of listening to music or playing music or watching a movie, having a few beers on the couch. It's the next day as well. We didn't know what we were doing. We're with, I don't think anyone does. There's no guidebook with parenthood. You just kind of, I can still remember driving out of that hospital car park with this tiny thing, and it's like, my God, they're letting us go home with him.
What was your support like when Oscar was born in terms of family, friends? What did you guys have around at that stage?
So my parents live locally, which was great, and it has gotten better over the years. But initially, I think they were really, really reluctant to help out with a newborn. They saw a lot of my older brother in him, who, he's still here, but he was very, very unwell as a baby. He had a condition called pyloric stenosis, where he sort of couldn't keep any food, drink, anything down. And he was actually near death when he was airlifted to the Children's Hospital back in the 70s. My parents were really young at the time, like early 20s. So I think they, really held on to that. And then when, then my sister was born and I was born, not so much as far as complications go, but then having another boy around, and I think they saw a lot of my brother in Oscar when he was born. And I think both of them really just like, yay, we're great. We're really proud grandparents, but also too, the fear of having a little boy and something go wrong was very, very real to them. They never got any help or support back in the day. So they really, really I felt that they took a bit of a step back. Didn't want to have him on their own. They were okay to visit if me and Chris were there, but otherwise they wouldn't have him on their own. Thankfully, that's improved as things have, as Oscar's gotten older. He does his own thing. He can talk. They know that he's fit and healthy and he's got his own personality, but certainly in those early stages, they were quite reluctant to. And both of them have admitted they never got help back in the day. It wasn't a thing that was done, I suppose.
How did you find Chris bonding with Oscar when he first arrived?
We had in the birthing suite, I was present through
the whole thing, yeah.
Every appointment. I was there for everything, and I did have, when he was born, I was there for the birth. I was checking everything out. Some of the midwives were sort of explaining to me what was happening, but I was sort of in the corner, and 2.5 hours after he was born, I had to ask to hold my son. I just wanted to take my top off and hold him to my skin. To me, that is the first sort of form of communication you can have with a bubba.
Yeah.
I found it, I kind of thought that my role was to look after everything else as far as food, shelter, keep the house organised, and Suze's job was to look after the bub because, she was feeding, sort of working out the sleeping arrangements because he just sort of wanted to be held. So I found it, I didn't know where I fit in really, apart from, I think men maybe just have the thought that they need practical tasks and that is taking care of stuff. So as far as, it took me a while to really find more than just the protective thing that no one had better try and hurt you or even upset you or, say you look like a funny baby or anything. It's just so protective. But then, just having those cuddles. I got kind of a deeper resonant voice, so I'd find I would sing to him
I loved it.
and cuddle him at the same time, and he could feel my voice just through my chest. And I'd find that, and I found that there were certain songs that would actually calm him more than others, and that was just wonderful. The fact that I could actually soothe him and that he responded to that was just amazing. So we'd be dancing around in the kitchen, and it's, you think everything's going to be soft and quiet for a baby. I'd crank the stereo up a bit and swinging him around safely, of course, but we'd be dancing and he would love it, and things like bath time as well. Like Suze, I don't know why, doesn't like baths.
I'm not a bath person. Never have been.
Well, who has time for a bath?
Let's be my own filth. Yeah, exactly.
So that would be the special time. We were petrified of bathing him. I was just, I never wanted to pick a baby up before they could support their own head.
Yeah.
Something just flips in you now. I can, I see babies like I see dogs on the street. I was like, that's a cute one. Whereas before, I
couldn't care less.
I wouldn't give him a second look.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you definitely got your confidence. You took a while to get into the groove, and I guess that experience at the hospital would not have helped. And that's, it's a shame that was dealt with the way it was, but it's not uncommon, sadly. I think a lot of partners do feel left out for the birth.
We were scared to pick him up.
Yeah.
We were scared to have anything to do with him unsupervised. We could try and rationalise things by saying people have been having babies since the dawn of time. Yeah. There's no reason we can't do it. But I think just wanting to be safe and just that fear that something was going to go wrong. But when I did get that skin-to-skin contact, it was amazing. Just being able to give him a bottle or just to help with the feeding and but again, we're nurses, not afraid to change a nappy, and a little baby's nappy is quite different to an adult pad.
Yeah.
So there was just, I was on board for everything.
Yeah.
But I felt, I suppose, in that space that I needed to be invited, or I needed to be told that I was okay, because I had no idea. And I was not in a good headspace. No one knew. No one in the hospital knew what had happened in the last 9 months. But there's just this bit of maybe assumption on both sides that I would speak up more. But when I did get that, even seeing him for the first time, something just switches in your brain. I don't know if that happens for everyone, but just the fact that he just appeared in the room.
Yeah, that was quite incredible for me as well. Just all of a sudden, there's an extra person in the room. It was really. Very surreal.
And Susie, that must have been special for you as well to witness the happiness that Chris had finally felt after such heartache.
Yeah, look, and I think it was so hard. Like straight after he was born, I think it was middle of the night. I think 2 or 3 in the morning. I can't even remember now. We were just so exhausted, and I was exhausted. He was exhausted. We got this new baby, and I don't think I even took it all in, to be totally honest with you. It was a lot because I didn't feel like I had a huge connection throughout my pregnancy to Oscar, and I had a fear that was going to continue on after he was born because people always say, it was kind of like a little alien hanging around there initially. It's just like, what do I do with him? Like, he doesn't know what's going on, and it was really, yes, it just very surreal. That's the only way I can describe it.
I think the joy for me didn't come until I started getting a bit back, until he got a bit of personality.
Definitely.
Like smiling for the first time, laughing for the first time, eating food that I cooked.
Yeah.
But no one else can lay claim to that I cooked Oscar his first meal and he loved it.
Yeah.
That was just
well done.
Amazing. And I suppose apart from that protective feeling, the real bonding sort of came as he got a bit older. Yeah. Even trying him with new foods like seafoods and trying giving
Peanut
him a
butter.
prawn for the first time, a peanut butter, and just we were
Waiting.
both just sitting there staring at him, going, "Are you going to have a reaction?" And probably just being able to, just fall into each other's arms after the baby was finally asleep. Just to think, my God, we've got through another day, and
it was really like that.
and that we'd done it together as well. Which sort of, I felt that I was doing an okay job because everyone was still alive, which sounds pretty dark, but that was what worked for me.
I get that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What a team you guys make. And I think, Chris, you sound like just an absolutely wonderful father. So I think you need to give yourself some credit because you are doing an amazing job.
You are, yeah.
You mentioned this sense of duty that you felt you had early on. Do you think, looking back now, do you think your views on what a good father is have changed?
Yeah. Because I'd never entertained the idea. Now, Oscar's 4.5 now. I've had a lot of time to reflect, and I think I do self-reflection as just part of who I am. I do tend to possibly overthink things. But and I do relate it back to my own dad now. I don't think I had the capacity to when I was younger. And it's not a conscious decision to go against, male roles and preconceived notions of dads. It's, I want my son to not be afraid of me. I want him to know. Sorry.
That's all right. Take your time.
I want him to know that I'm his friend and that I'll always love him no matter what he does.
He knows that too.
And I want him to be able to just depend on me, and I want, and for him to know that, maybe I want him to maybe get as much joy from me being in his life that I do from him being in my life. I think the probably one thing that comes up is I'm adamant that I don't want to be the disciplinarian, the wait till your dad gets home, that we've both got to share that role. Not that Suze has ever put that on me, but I made a conscious decision to work less, that we both work part-time to be able to be at home with Oscar and try and have as much family time as we can. So I'm not, as I think Suze mentioned earlier, I'm not career driven. I do enjoy my career, and I'm trying to build on that, and I do love my work, but he just when he came along, it was like, I've got a new focus. It's which the cliches, I suppose, when people have kids, people tell you that, but you don't sort of realise the whole thing. It's not about me anymore, which it is still about me. If I can't look after myself, I can't look after anyone else. But I want him to look up to me, and I want him to learn, through my mistakes and maybe through my examples, which just sounds so corny, but I want him to be a kind person. He's got a wicked sense of humour that I think he gets from both of us, but I want him to be a good person that, can look after other people when they need it, which we can both see in him that he already does that.
That is beautiful, Chris. Thank you for being so honest. What would your advice be to dads out there who might be listening? If they're struggling, if they're feeling like they don't know their place or they don't know what their role is as a father, what would be your message to them?
Have a mental health plan before you become a dad. When you've still got the time to think, and a mental health care plan doesn't, if you can find professional help, that's great, but just work out a plan to be able to look after yourself and write it down, because it is hectic when it starts. Even if it means, a small support network, dads groups, which I never did. I really wish I had professional help in that time, but I thought I could handle it. don't think you can handle everything by yourself, because again, if you can't look after yourself, you can't look after anyone else. It doesn't have to be crisis with a capital C to know that everything's going to shit. You just got to be able to realise if you're not coping. Keep your communication open with your partner, because other people can tell you when your mental health is tanking before you can. People that know you well can recognise signs before you can recognise or even acknowledge it in yourself. And believe that you can do it. There is, I think people are inherently kind, and people will look after other people. Most people would just, if someone needs help, people will do it. So just have a bit of confidence, and also, try and have a bit of fun. And I suppose from my experience, make that choice. If you can, spend as much time with your bub as you can, because you can't force an experience into half an hour at the end of the day. You don't want to hear secondhand stories of guess what he did for the first time today. It's like you want to be present, because it only happens once.
You got the first smile and the first laugh, and
She's never let me forget it. It's mundane sometimes, and it's hard work, but the little bits of magic happen when you don't expect it. So you've got to give it the time and the space. And it's very hard to be present with, for that amount of time. It's exhausting, but just the rewards, it's amazing.
You've pretty much answered my final question, guys, which is, what is the most joyful part of parenting for you?
For me, seeing Oscar grow into this amazing little person. Like, he's genuinely a funny guy. Like, I've seen him, show a level of care and compassion to people, which has genuinely impressed me. But yeah, he's just so funny and thoughtful. It's kind of amazing. We're like, wow, we did good. It's nice.
And it's not just us too. We're proud parents, when we get feedback from other people, it's like, that kid's amazing. I was like, it's not just us, because everyone, loves their own kid. But it's from this little bump and an idea, and what started out as a thought, it is a miracle of life, I suppose, for want of a better phrase. But he is amazing, and just that is always evolving and changing, and we know that we've got the rest of our lives to enjoy this beautiful little kid grow up and
see what he does. Yeah.
Survive and Thrive is a podcast from Panda, Perinatal Anxiety and Depression Australia, an accredited mental health service. You'll find all the links and information you need in the episode notes wherever you're listening. But just a reminder, if you are a new or expecting parent, you can call Panda's free national helpline from Monday to Saturday on 1300 726 306. If you're experiencing a mental health crisis, call Lifeline on 13 11 14. If you're in a life-threatening emergency, call 000. Panda recognises the individual and collective contributions of people with a lived or living experience of mental health issues, their families, loved ones and supporters. Every story informs how we care for people and their community. Survive and Thrive is produced by Dead Set Studios for Panda, Perinatal Anxiety and Depression Australia. Don't forget there are lots more episodes in your podcast feed, so hit follow in your favourite podcast app.